Alrighty, so this is video 3 of the Innovative Marine 25-gallon Lagoon. This is about 2 months since the last video, so we got a lot to cover here. I'm going to go ahead and start the equipment, and if I have some time, I'll go ahead and talk about the LiveStock. So what you see up top here, if you with the lights in the last video, you might have noticed that I had some metal lights going across the top. I said they probably wouldn't be permanent, and sure enough, I ended up pulling them off and replacing them with a light I had in another tank. So if you're not familiar with this light already, this is the AI Prime 16 HD. It's aqua illumination. This is a fully programmable light, and by that I mean you can adjust the settings, the intensities, the lights, which colors you want on at what times. You can upload schedules. There's whole forums for this on Facebook. It is fully programmable. You can do it from your phone, your tablet, your computer. It is Wi-Fi enabled. You can control it all from there at any time, even when you're not at home. It's a cool little light. Highly recommend for these smaller tanks especially. I had good success with this on my Evo, and now it's doing great on this tank as well. One thing I do want to talk about this light, and it's important when you're factoring in costs. This light does not come with a mounting bracket. So if you want to have this light suspended, there's that option. I prefer the goosenecks. There's also standard mounting brackets, and the reason why I prefer the gooseneck is because you have more maneuverability with it. So not so much just on this tank, but any tank in the future, you'll have the option to be able to move it around and play with it more. It doesn't do it justice right now, but usually this whole back area is very full. And I had a cooling fan in the last video that was sitting there, which is why that bracket is offset. And you can't do this with the standard mounting bracket, which is why I recommend to get a gooseneck. If this gets full and you need to put this in a different area to make room for something such as a cooling fan, you can do that. You can put it wherever you want theoretically on this tank and still be able to maneuver the light over whichever area you want. So I'll try my best to put a link to that. I did buy this light several years ago, so I might have some issues trying to find it. I know there's also different sizes on the goosenecks. I went ahead and got the bigger one just in case in the future, like this tank, I upgraded in size, so I wanted to make sure I had enough room in the future and wouldn't have to buy another mounting arm. So I'm going to move on to the skimmer that I have here. In the last video, I completely butchered the name, and I'm sorry if it confused anyone. This is the K1 Nano, so it's ice cap. K1 Nano, not the K2. The K2 is blue and much bigger. I know you can't tell because of the lighting in here right now, but this is orange. That's the biggest giveaway, it's orange. As you can see, I mean, this is about 4 days worth of collection. It is thick. You can hardly see any light going through it. I can see, the camera doesn't pick it up, but there's almost nothing going through it. It's very silent. It does a fantastic job. Like I said in the other videos, you don't necessarily need a skimmer with this tank or any nano tank in general. Water changes for the most part will suffice, but if you're like me and you want that extra filtration, go ahead. I would highly recommend this one if you're wanting to pull the trigger on a skimmer. So next thing I want to talk about is the lighting back here. So underneath this light, I have a in-tank basket specifically for growing Chaeto. I didn't want to spend a whole lot of money on this light since I already did on the main tank display. So I went ahead and went with the cheaper option. What you see here is a reptile dome, just kind of like in general tank dome for lights. It's a 5.5 inch. I went ahead and did the Flukers one because that's what was cheaper. The light bulb inside of it itself, I got off Amazon. I think it was like $20. The dome was like 12 and some change. So altogether with taxes, I mean, I was under $35 for this setup, and it is doing fantastic. And again, links for all this stuff will be in the description. But as you can see, this Chaeto, I started off with just a small clump, and it is growing dense all the way down. It's growing out through the top, out the side. It's almost ready for trim. I just haven't got to it because I was wanting it to grow, you know, down a little bit and completely fill that basket, but I'll be getting to that eventually. The light itself is heavy on the reds. There's one blue light in the middle, but it's done a fantastic job, and you can't beat that for the price that you pay for it. So highly recommend looking into that if you don't want to spend a lot of money on your Refugium light. It's done perfect for me. A lot of people, you know, they run them for a few hours after the main tank shuts off. I have not shut that light off. It has been running for over a month now, no issues. It's splash proof, waterproof. The dome isn't itself, but I figured it was high enough away that it wouldn't have any issues, and so far so good. So fingers crossed I didn't just jinx myself on that one. In the other video, and I kind of touched on it earlier already, I had a cooling fan there. Don't really need the cooling fan anymore. I had temperature issues on the smaller tanks. This room is a lot more controlled than the room that the other tank was, so I don't necessarily need the fan, but just to show you there is a gap back there. I actually just took the fan off the other day because it hadn't kicked on in weeks, and I was like, why have something else up there if you don't need it? So it is now gone. You can see what it looked like in the last video if you're interested, and if you have cooling issues, those fans work great. Just keep in mind your evaporation is going to go up as it makes an effort to cool the water. So that is almost it for the equipment. The only other thing that I have not yet done is the ATO. I haven't decided on an ATO. I had the Innovative Marine one and it crapped out on me after being in a box for moving, so something must have happened to it, but so far I haven't decided on something. If you have recommendations for a smaller tank, something that's worked well for you specifically for this tank, please leave me a comment in the description in the comment area below so that I can take a look at it. Really hesitant on buying something. I've been manually topping off, but it would be nice to have something that can do it for me. You might also notice I do have an Mp10 on the back here. I had it on the other tank. It's not really necessary after you make the filter modifications that I have. It's running on its lowest setting. I cannot turn the dial back any farther than it is. So power head's not really required, but it's always nice to have a little flow that you can adjust just in case in the event you need it. It's actually really nice for when I am feeding because it's putting out less than the main pump, so I can still have some water movement but not, blowing it everywhere. The other thing in the last video, I didn't have them on yet, but the random flow generators, if you were even considering those or haven't yet, please go buy those. Those are fantastic. I put links in the other video for them. The water movement in comparison is phenomenal. You can see the sway. Every once in a while you'll see just a random blast go into the GSP in the back there. I never had them before, but any tank in the future I will definitely go ahead and swap the stock nozzles out for those. So that's about it for the equipment. As far as the livestock goes, the only rock I had in here last time was this guy in the back. So I've added quite a bit since then. So I think it's about 2 months, maybe a little bit more than 2 months since I started adding stuff. I just added some more corals today. We picked up some more zoas. I got a few on the rack back here. I picked up this frog spawn, I want to say 2 weeks ago. It was nice and full until we disturbed it because, of course, we got new corals and we weren't satisfied with how the rocks looked and everything, so we changed stuff around. So it's still a little irritated and trying to come back out, but everything else has been awesome. As far as cleanup crew goes on this tank, I have 2 fish and a shrimp, so I don't have a lot of extra food hitting the ground. It was mainly just for algae control. So I have close to about 10 hermits right now in here. They're all kind of small. There's one little guy there that you can see, and probably about 6 turbos randomly, throughout this tank. You can see there's 2 on the back wall maybe there. I don't know if you can see those, but not a whole lot. The biggest thing for me has been the emerald crab. So with these little bam bams in the front here, the orange, I had hair algae that was really hard to get to, that was growing at the base of them on the plug. And you can manually remove it, but you can only get so much. And I was getting really frustrated because it was always irritated and they would never fully open. So I went ahead and picked one of those emerald crabs up, and within 5 minutes, he completely took care of all of it. And then he moved on to the other rocks. And I think honestly, one would be sufficient for a tank of this size. You don't want to risk starving them just because you're having algae problems. So if you have a similar issue, I would definitely go for that. So as always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, and hopefully I see you guys on the next video. All right, later.